Hi friends, today we are going to solve quadratics using square roots. So before we found solutions from a graph. Recall it is the x-intercept, or where the graph crosses the x-axis. We found them from tables, which was the x value when y is 0, and we found them from factoring. Now we're going to find solutions by using square roots. So you see here, if we have something like x squared equals 36, we square root both sides and then simplify the square root of 36. And then we get our answer, x is positive and negative 6. This part is very important because positive 6 times positive 6 equals 36, and also negative 6 times negative 6 equals 36. So you're always going to have this positive and negative in front of your answer. So let's look here. X squared equals 49. To undo a squared, so like to undo multiplication, we use division. To undo addition, we use subtraction. To undo a squared, we do a square root. The square root of x squared is x. Square root of 49, if we put that in our calculator, it would tell us that the answer is 7. So our answer is plus or minus 7. X squared equals 169. Again, to undo that squared, we will square root both sides. Square root of x squared is x. If you put square root of 169 in your calculator, you would get positive and you would get 13, but we have to say that it's positive and negative 13. Again, because positive 13 times positive 13 is 169, and negative 13 times negative 13 is 169. X squared equals 48. If we square root both sides, if you put square root 48 into your calculator, you would get 6.9282 blah, blah, blah. That means that that is not a perfect square, which means we need to simplify 48 here. So 48 is 2 and 24. 2 is prime. 24 is 2 and 12. 2 is prime. 12 is 2 and 6, 2 is prime, and 6 is 2 and 3. So that means 48 is the same as 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 3. And if we're looking for pairs here, I have 2 pairs of 2s. So those can go on the outside. And then we still have a 3 on the inside. So finishing simplifying here, 2 times 2 is 4. So x equals positive and negative 4 times the square root of 3. X squared is 252. If we take the square root of both sides, if you put that in your calculator, you'd get 15.8745, and it would keep going, which means we need to simplify. Square root of 252. 252 divided by 2 is 126. 126 divided by 2 is 63. If I look at my factors of 63, I know I can do 7 and 9. 7 is prime, and 9 is 3 times 3. So now I know 252 breaks up into 2 times 2 times 3 times 3 times 7. If we look at pairs, I have a pair of 2s and a pair of 3s. So I can take out a 2 and a 3. But 7 has to stay home, which means our final answer then is positive and negative 6 times the square root of 7. 7x squared equals 112. Before we can take the square root, we have to divide both sides by 7. We have to get x squared by itself before we can take the square root. 112 divided by 7 is 16. Now I can take the square root of 16. If you put that in your calculator, you would get 4. So x equals positive and negative 4. Negative 3x squared equals negative 24. Again, we have to get rid of the number in front of the x squared first. So if we divide both sides by negative 3, we would get x squared equals 8. And then square root both sides. If you put the square root of 8 into your calculator, you would get 2.82842, and it would keep going. So we have to split up 8. 8 is 2 and 4. 2 is prime. 4 is 2 and 2. So that means x, if we break down 8, 2 times 2 times 2. We have one pair of 2's we can bring out. So we have a 2 on the outside and a 2 on the inside. All right. Negative 1/2 x squared equals negative 36. You have a couple options here. You could divide both sides by negative 1/2, or you could multiply both sides by negative 2. I'm going to divide by negative 1/2. It might be easier for you to call that negative 0.5 when you put it in your calculator. We end up with x squared is 72. If you put the square root of 72 into your calculator, you'd get 8.48528. It would keep going. So I know I'm going to have to split up 72. I'm going to do 2 and 36. 2 is prime. 36 is 2 and 18. 2 is prime. 18 is 2 and 9. 2 is prime. And 9 is 3 and 3. So now I can say that x is plus or minus the square root. 72 ends up being 2 times 2 times 2 times 3 times 3. So I have a pair of 2's and a pair of 3's. That other 2 is going to have to stay inside. I can take out a 2 and a 3. So my final answer then, x is plus or minus 6 times the square root of 2. All right, this one, we have to get rid of the 5 first, so we'll add that to both sides. Then we have 3x squared is 27. Now we'll divide both sides by 3, and I get x squared is 9. Now I can square root, and the square root of 9 is 3, so x equals positive and negative 3. All right, this one, we got to get rid of the 19 first. So we'll add 19. Negative 5x squared equals 163. Dividing by negative 5, we get x squared is negative 32.6. And if you try to take the square root, it will give you an error because you cannot take the square root of a negative number. So if you have a negative under here, when you go to take the square root, the answer is no solutions. All right, let's look at the 3x squared plus 17 is 209. Start by taking 17 from both sides. And we get 3x squared is 192. Divide both sides by 3. And we get x squared is 64. And then if we square root both sides, The square root of 64 is 8. So x equals plus or minus 8. All right, this one looks a little bit different. To start this one, we have to get rid of the 5 first. So we'll divide both sides by 5. And then I get x minus 7 quantity squared equals 2. Now we take the square root. Because that's in parentheses, we'll take the square root first, and then we'll get rid of the 7. So if I take the square root of both sides, now this just becomes x minus 7 equals plus and minus the square root of 2. We can't do anything with that square root of 2. The only factors of 2 are 1 and 2. 2 is prime. So now we just add 7. And our final answer is x equals 7 plus or minus the square root of 2. All right, one more here. We'll start by adding 50. And we have 4 times x plus 6 quantity squared equals 76. Dividing by 4, we get x plus 6 quantity squared equals 19. Square root both sides. 19 is prime, so there's nothing else we can do with that 19. So then I get x plus 6 equals plus and minus square root 19. And then finally subtract 6. And our final answer is x equals negative 6 plus and minus the square root of 19. All right, friends, have a good day.